All right, turn 20. New reinforcements. I've incorporated them into fleets. I haven't moved them onto the board yet because technically they just jumped into here, and now they assess the situation. So you don't have them spilling out, right away. You could make arguments that the fleet commander should have orders to make their next move already in place. Like, they're being delayed too much. They're not just incompetent once they reach the field. But honestly, I kind of like the idea that they sit here and debate what they're going to do. We've divided the fleets up. This is not cheating. This is just pre-doing something I have to do at the end of the turn when I write the orders. I've divided the fleets up into two different groups. The first assault and this 40th. The 40th I gave to my really excellent leader, who unfortunately has nothing like the warrant to back him up. He will never command the majority of the Zodani force, unlike the Imperial commander, who will command. Once the warrant comes out, he can be in command of whatever he wants to be, basically, without playing around, without any kind of weird shit, just with that warrant. First assault is under the main leader, and we'll figure out where those are, how they're making it, but they're both heavy jump capable. The 40th fleet under the good commander is jump 4 capable, but in both cases I could cut this way if I desire. They don't have to. Seeing as the battle's down here, I'm not sure which is the fastest, bestest way, because there's sort of a dearth of bases if Fate is a base, but other than that, and there is a chain of bases kind of through here, through the neutral territory, so that's actually easier to cross somehow. For the Imperials, they got reinforcements as well. I did find I made a cock-up with the 18th Fleet. I don't know why I had it moving to here. It could not have possibly gotten there. I changed it to here. That wouldn't have affected any of the plans. And it's not like the 2 new ships that I added or whatever were the problem. I think I just had a jump 4 ship sitting on top of the stack and thought that it was capable of moving jump 4. When it was not. We have attacks coming in. Grand Fleet is continuing whatever siege it's doing there. Why not? Regina trying to get those big points back. And over here continuing with Mughis or whatever. 17th Colonial, 1st Provisional has slipped back all the way back to here. And we're seeing, hey, we got the 28th Fleet trying to recapture what they were going. And this is all pre-plotted stuff, people going in and out of places, blundering back and forth. It's the nature of the game until something like this starts to happen. I think if something like that ever happens, this is the furthest I think I've ever gotten in the game. I don't think I've gotten that second wave of reinforcements on it in for the Zodani. I've never completed the game, I'm pretty sure. Not positive. And yeah, we're basically waiting for that big fight. It's kind of going to happen. The Zodani want it to happen. The Imperials don't have a say anymore. But I think they're going to get their 18th Fleet in there. I don't know, the Zodani might get cold feet. Or might look and say, oh shit, we're close, man. They're close, but they're not that close. But do you want to risk it? I don't know. Because this thing can't catch them until that good leader with the warrant shows up eventually. Whenever that may happen. And it may never happen. All right, on to dealing with little battles and exchanges and whatnot. Oh shit, it's close. Regina's worth 20. Denatam here was worth like 10. This did not fall. 295 and a half. One low-tech planet. Not real low, but pretty damn low. And it's over. Arcadia. If I can get that extra 20% next turn, it's over. If Mugler falls, that's 11 points. It's over. That's not going to fall very quickly, though. 17th Colonial, Genji, Extolay. I'm sure those can take it. I think it's game over. I cannot see how the Imperials can prevent it. This stuff can't hit that. Even if that were going to change the nature of the game, it can't do it. Now, given that it's over, I'm tempted to fight that massive battle and see what it works out as. I'm also tempted to just say, you know what, I can sit here or I can advance and grab another planet. Yurst is worth 5, that's enough. Reath and Algene are going to be hard. No. I thought the capitalization was, hey, this is a big planet with a lot of people. Well, in the case of Reath and most of these capitalized things, that's the case. Reath has 500 SDBs, 20,000 troops. It's not worth a lot of victory points. The value of the amount of population you have under your control, the amount of industry, whatever, none of that matters compared to the tech level. The tech level is the important thing. And I can see making that argument. Roop is in range. I could grab that. And in a sense, it makes more sense to plot to guarantee that victory. And I don't know how much fun the exercise of the battle is. Both cases, the fleets can retreat. It's just a matter that that this is just off, I think. I don't think that my Zodani attack was particularly well coordinated and pre-planned. It was better than I've done before, probably. I don't think there was a whole hell of a lot more I could do with the Imperials. Sure, there's luck involved. The leaders you pick, the values, you get whatever. I don't particularly want to plot out the next turn without any evaluation. I'm going to consider, though. I think I'm going to do something. I think I'm going to keep playing. I'm not going to end it at the victory conditions for the game. I want to see where the tipping point really is. You know, that tipping point is clearly not the 300 points. 300 points is too easy for the Zodani to get. There's got to be a place where it feels better. It may be it's not going to be 400 points, right? I don't think it's going to be 400 points. There aren't all that many more points left in the Imperium. In which case, if I am going to continue playing it out, I think I do make that battle. And because that was the plan I was going to do. No matter what, though, I think we can agree we have what amounts to the Zodani major victory, whatever, automatic victory. We'll see. I mean, you know, maybe a miracle will happen. Maybe Graham will have trouble taking Lanth. I think it's trivial to do. Was my defense for the Imperium that bad? No, not really. The biggest defensive factor that I have to prevent planets from falling is the SDBs. They're written on the board. There's nothing I can do about them. Fleets couldn't do much more. And ground units, at best, they're a speed bump. It's just too fucking easy to bomb them into oblivion. Now, big stacks of small units are an interesting factor because they're hard to wipe out. Because you'll be doing surface bombardments at lower numbers against each one and getting lower percentages against each one. Basically, the concept there is the forces are spread out all over the planet instead of like in one decisive, command headquarters or whatever. So a 500-point unit is really easy to blow to shit. 10, 20 point units is really hard to blow to shit. But your big units can come down and schwack them and do quite a bit of damage. You know, as long as you have your assault cruiser, your assault transports with you, you can throw a pretty big force down. So I don't think there's much I could do with the Imperials to stop this Zodani advance. The only thing is, you know, how did they come to this 300 points? And my feeling is that it's just way off. I don't know how much off. And we're going to probably see a little bit of that as I keep playing out to try to increase the points. But the problem is you won't have the same last-ditch defense that we're kind of seeing the Imperials put in, right? Yes, they retreated from it because they feared it. But there was, you know, some action down here to reduce the score and whatnot. Is it possible that, you know, maybe I didn't give the 20 points for Regina back to the Imperials or something like that? Yeah, that's also possible. I don't think that's the case, though. I think I've been tracking. I may have made a couple of smaller mistakes, but I don't think I've made a big one like that. But it's always possible when you're trying to track things. And there's no way to reconstruct that easily, is there? Maybe there is. Yeah. All right. We will count the points because the way I can do that is by searching all the planets and adding them up and getting a value. I think that'll work. What I'm doing is I'm covering up the planets that I've got claims on, making sure that they're actually taken, counting the points. I'm at 88 for this region down here, half points over here. And I notice the game is actually over because Rangant here, I believe the 35th Fleet has troops with it. Yeah, it has an assault ship. Rangant is over there, and I don't have that captured, and I didn't score it, but that is worth 3.5 points. Nope, not quite. That puts me at 299. I'm sorry, I'm 1 point short of winning the game at this point. Could the 47th Fleet do it? Let's see. 47th has no troops, so unless Plavin is a vacuum world, which it's not, I would not get the points for that. So yeah, but you can see how fucking close it is. I'm not going to spend the troops on Rangant or on Plavin. I can't get the points on. But I'll continue this counting, and we'll see what happens. But I have the feeling I'm going to keep going because I am enjoying. And I want to see kind of where that tipping point should be. I've never gotten, like I said, I don't think I've gotten this far. And I think I've always gotten kind of bogged down here where I couldn't make it past Lousy and Grant was shit. And I had jumped 2 capable ships that made it over here. And then I'm like, well, I would have sent my fleet this way. And I just had a lot less tolerance for the fuck ups I was making. But what I've noticed is over the years, I don't come back to this game very often. I haven't played it all that many times, especially since, you know, my high school era when I was thinking, grade school, middle school really, where I had people who were playing middle school, early high school maybe, playing Traveler. And I had these thoughts of like doing a campaign and running them within it. And you know, that was always the holdoff was let me play this as a campaign backdrop, you know, for a role-playing game rather than, you know, just play it. But I could never get people for Traveler very often. I know I don't know. Weird thing. For whatever reason, it was always easy for me to get people to play Rollmaster with me. I'm not a big fan of Rollmaster. But for whatever reason, that was the game that people would like be interested in me running more than the things that I wanted to run, and things that I think worked well. I mean, I had a great time with RuneQuest when I did it recently, and I had not that recently, 15 years ago, and with Vampire was probably the best game I ever ran, and had fun with Amber as well. I think I did a good job with that. But I don't know, Rollmaster, the important thing is competence, and somehow I'm able to be competent in running Rollmaster in a way that I don't think many people are, having seen other people run it. My recount, however, came out in favor of the Zodani, 299, which means it is over. I could capture Rangent and get the automatic victory. I think I'm going to continue going. I'm curious what the strategy leads to, what the tipping point actually is, whatever. I did notice one thing that I think maybe I cheated. My placement of... Oh, this thing hasn't been recovering. My placement of these guerrillas, I don't think they can be placed where there's a naval base. I know the secret base cannot be. But I have the feeling the guerrillas may also have that restriction. Again, yes, they help take a fate, but I blew half of them here, and I could have had them placed around where they would gain me more points in general, I think. Unfortunately, they don't tell you in the order of battle the setup. The setup's kind of weirdly mixed into places, if I recall correctly. I don't know. Here we go. All right. Preparing for play. Deploys his guerrilla units. Fuck. Yeah, the secret base and the guerrilla units. Secret base is specified one place. Over here, guerrilla units. At the start, no. I don't know. I don't know where the fuck they tell you where you can set them up. I'm looking. Maybe I made a misunderstanding as to how they worked. I've just assumed that you could put them anywhere. Yeah, I don't think there are actual instructions on how you set them up, so we'll say I did okay. Yeah, so the game is officially over at this point, and we're continuing the endeavor just to see a couple of things. One, whether or not the Imperials can turn the tide, and two, sort of what this point limit should be. But that's going to be all fucked up because, first of all, we're coming to the major battle. It's obvious to me there was no way to get more than the corridor fleet up against the main Zodani fleet. I wiped out the little stuff I could. I stomped on the 17th colonials when I could find them, right? The one time I was able to catch something. Certainly there's luck in the admiral choices. You could get much luckier with either side, honestly. I don't know. The Sotani are pretty reasonable. But, you know, I could have had the right admiral available and put him with a stack early on that, you know, could have turned into the corridor fleet type thing. The problem with that, of course, is to coordinate and consolidate a fleet like that, you need multiple admirals to come together. I guess you could do it differently by abandoning the fleets and such not. I think as a general rule, I would say you can't leave ships floating around nowhere outside a fleet if it's larger than the command that the admiral is taking. I think that would be a fair thing, but you could still fiddle around, you know, to some extent. It would take a lot of work and a lot of unnecessary travel to manage to get the kind of results that you'd want out of it, though. All right, plotting then. Just to reiterate where I am, because the decision to defend here or to gather the fleets here, whatever, to a large extent, that's actually driven by the victory point total. And granted, I made a misjudgment in a sense, but also this is the soonest that the 18th could get together with the corridor. And there's a lot of reasons not to do that, you know. If I could keep the flexibility of the corridor picking off points or whatever, that would be great. But I was in a position where if I don't face this down, I'm in trouble. And now it's got me kind of walled in, where if I split up my fleets, it can destroy them in detail, which is kind of what I was trying to do with the Zidani fleets. And, you know, hit the 17th, but whoops, it squished it through my fingers. The command difficulties that are going to come when the 18th takes overall command and shifts and takes the larger force, well, I mean, if we win this fight, maybe that's okay. Because maybe half my fleet under the corridor fleet commander is good enough to fight what's left. I doubt it. Remember the resilience. But coming in here, we'll be jumping in without fuel. So actually the Zidani, if they go in there, are taking all the risk. It's hard to tell how many points you're talking as a difference, you know. A little bit more care with the Zidani, and I could be maybe 10, 15 points ahead. I could have taken more planets. I could have grabbed some of this shit that's really cheap to take. Obviously, a lot of this is open again and is available because we drove their fleet back. On the other hand, you know, what's 50 points? You know, does that mean that I'm back here at my defensive line? Where is the battle going to be? Where is the line going to be drawn where the Imperium has to say, I can let you go no further? And it may not be far from here because, you know, Graham is coming in and they're going to grab Lanth. Lanth is worth 22 points. DeGanzio is worth another, what, 13? Something high. DeGanzio is another 13. You know, there's 35 points right there. So this might not be a bad place at 250 or at 350 instead of at 300. I just didn't have the time to get the ships in there, and some of it may be I didn't get, you know, those big battleships in. Some of it may be the reinforcement chart, which feels like it's just wrong. There's just so many different things that make me feel like this wasn't play tested completely in this version, but this kind of victory point chart, this type of victory point style it's very hard to argue that you would come to that and just say, yeah, well, 300 seems about right. That is a difficult thing for me to comprehend, that somebody would go with something so eminently tinkerable and come up with numbers that feel so absolutely wrong. Because again, I feel like there was a lot more room to squeeze a few more points out with the Zodani, and I probably made some errors in terms of how the fleets developed and pushed into Imperial territory. I mean, one of the assault fleets had to, well, one of them came through here. One of them had to work its way through. I had a fleet, though, that came back, that hit here and came back, and a decent quantity of ships. That's the 17th Colonial. Decent quantity of ships, and just out of contention entirely for a large part of the game, because it struck this way where it really wasn't needed. There were plenty of ships that were, high enough jump capable. This is just a mistake of me not seeing, hey, I need jump 3 to get through here. And had to turn around, come back, and make that other tracing. So, that's probably a fair amount of points there. It's hard to tell because the points swing back and forth, The Imperials took a bunch of this stuff back, and I just don't know. But it's certainly not 300 points. If my bungling, the Sword World's kind of bungled around, I don't know, the Vargar, I'm not too unhappy with what happened with them. They're associated in the big battle fleet and capable of moving with it. But yeah, the Sword Worlds I definitely bungled a little bit. I think I bungled around a little bit with the Zodani. I think that 300 points could have been gotten a couple of turns ago. And if that's the case, well, the corridor fleet is not enough to stop what was available. And we're still not talking. That first set of Zodani reinforcements is not in yet. They're here, here, and here. And now we got a second wave coming in. I mean, even if the Imperials manage to fight out a bloody Pyrrhic battle because they can't leave and somehow defeat the Zodani fleet heavily enough, there'll still be remnants of it because it'll withdraw. And if the numbers look bad, really bad early on, they'll withdraw really quick. And what else? I don't know. I mean, if the numbers are bad, if the 18th in the corridor is powerful, does it have the force to push its way around? Maybe, maybe not. Anyway, that's a lot to see. But what we know is they did not develop fast enough. And corridor fleet is holding everything pretty much that the Imperials could hope for at this point. So, after movement, we got the mother of all battles. A bunch of, not this, but a bunch of planets that, if the Zodani get any of them, they get their victory point over the line. Let me make sure. 40th Fleet. 40th Fleet is allowed to move. I forgot to move them. They got a 4 jump rating. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's bring them around the other side, just because that gives me some capacity to fill in gaps if need be. And whatever. I don't really know, but I'm sending this one down this way. So, in the standard, hey, tilt my counters so that I know that they moved. But we've got assaults, ranging in against here. Really kind of soft underbelly at this point. Not that I kept my troops all on the front. And, you know, maybe that's the thing. Maybe I could have slowed the Zodani down just enough to make that 300 points a reasonable barrier by putting loads and loads of troops in some of the frontline places. Yes, you know, I have areas back here. Granted, some of these came in as reinforcements, but where there are a lot of troops, and some of them were not frontline, were not reinforcements, and thus could have been set up a little closer. And maybe that would delay things a turn or two, at most. I don't like if it's that close, and I'm not sure if it is. I really don't know. It feels like, again, that the Zodani could have done a little better than they have. So, I don't know. Anyway, I'll come back after the fighting, or in the midst of the fighting. We're not sure. After those battles, the Zodani are at 326 by my count. So the game has actually officially ended in terms of victory points. It doesn't matter what happens in this battle. But I'm beginning to think that I overestimated the Zodani force in comparison to the Imperial force. Spreading out all the ships. I haven't done the counting yet. But I think they're going to get their asses handed to them. And that will be a good time to stop. because I'm a Zodani at heart. So the interesting thing about the races in Traveler, all the ones represented here, except for the Vargar, are basically human. The Zodani have psionic abilities. They're not human. Well, they're humanoids. They look human in every sense. Everything. The Vargar look like dogs. Bipedal dogs, but dogs. There are a number of races. There's the Aslan, who look like lions, of course. And, but the postulation is that the races were sprinkled throughout the galaxy by the ancients, who are weird-looking kind of froggy type things with wings, at least in their degenerate phase. But reminds me of the Newtlings in RuneQuest. But anyway, what you have as the Imperials, they're mainly Villani as their race. And there's multiracial aspects to both empires. The Villani are not from Earth. The Solani are from Earth. However, there's the theory that Earth was actually the breeding ground for the human races. Just interesting crap from the background that I just feel like babbling about because what the hell. But anyway, the notable thing is there aren't, these are not Earthlings here, even if they look like them in both sides. But the Villani are basically the ruling class of the Empire, just like the Zodani are the ruling class of the Zodani Empire. All right. Well, I'll do the count, and we'll see what we come up with. But yeah, just looking at the picture, oh, that does not look good for the Zodani. And, yeah, I got a lot more ships, but they ain't here. And maybe, a few more points would allow the Imperium to kind of push back against that initial gain, at least for a little while those additional forces come into play. Now, this is forces that are not present from that first wave of reinforcements, and then the second wave of reinforcements is this and this. So, decent sized quantities that can easily balance this out, but, All right. I'm not looking forward to counting. It's a little worse than I think it is, but it's pretty bad. 142 for the Zodani, 205 for the Imperials. Now, Here's the thing, though. If that 18th fleet was just a little slower, the Imperial fleet would be significantly less. It would be around 100. About half the firepower seems to be in here. A lot of these 8-point battleships came in. And that's something, unless information is not hidden, which there's no indication either way, the composition of that fleet is kind of unknown. I haven't seen that in play. All I know is that the Imperials have been shipping forces forward. I don't know to what extent. I know I had this outnumbered. If it was even an even fight, though, the Imperials have the edge. They have better leadership. The Zodani know that they do not have a bonus leader. They have the fleet technology advantage of +1. These are both standard quality fleets. There's a fair amount of colonial stuff in here, but I'm going to get that shot up pretty quickly. I have all these jump 1 and 2 ships. Those want to die, even if they take troops with them, I think. And then, speaking of which, I might have wanted to drop all my Imperial troops here at Intha. How is Intha? Where is Intha? Yeah, why don't we drop a bunch of shit over there, make it a little harder to kill things, because I get a lot of troops on board these fleets. Anyway, so I got leadership, I got technology advantage, and I also have the advantage that the Imperials can retreat if they want to. The Zodani cannot. They could retreat a small fleet. Basically, all their partially streamlined stuff can refuel at the gas giant and get out of there. There's no time to refuel for those. And I do have 2 tankers, which could refuel 6 ships as well. So I can get a fair amount of this out of there. But we're going to have to fight a few rounds at least before that's decided. And we're at a significant disadvantage. +2 on the die roll for the Imperials and a numerical superiority. How's the defensive factor on the ships? I don't know. There's a lot of good high defenses on some of these Zodani ships. And both sides have some scouts to take losses with as well. Because the fleet battle is the important thing. That huge bombing factor that the scouts have from their sandcasters or magical sneakiness or whatever it is. Those maybe aren't as important as winning the fleet battle. Because once you win the fleet battle, you can take the planets. You can gather the bombardment capability. There's enough ships that have bombardment. But there's some pretty iffy ships here too. Some of these cruisers and stuff. On the other hand, they're not streamlined. So it's like, maybe I'll take it on something else. And then the tankers, cheap hits. But if you need them to get out of the way, they're too valuable. I need to go make some tea before I actually start rolling some dice. And we'll do this live because I think this is probably the end of the play. All right, let's go at it. So first of all, you do it in sets of 48, which is not the easiest thing to deal in, right? It's not even a power of 2. I don't know quite why the numbering choices were made that were. 96, 144 is the first number. So for the Zodani, we'll be looking at 2 rolls on the 48 table. And we'll charge the losses. Okay, so we got 10, 19, 19 hits over here to begin with. 96, another 48 is 144, which means we'll be on the 42 table for the last one. And that's a shitty 6. So we go to 25 hits. And remember, these are against the defense factors. They're not step losses. Now, 144 and 48 is 202. Which means, no, not 144, right? 96, yeah, 144 and 48 is 202, which means I get 4 full rolls and then like a 3. So the 4 full rolls, and these are a +2 each, are 22, 31, 40 hits to begin with. Shit. No. I'm only allowed to add the, let me make sure of that. I think I'm only allowed to add the +1 for leadership on one of the rolls. So I'll randomize which one if that's the case, but let me make sure that's the case. I got that wrong. A +3 doesn't give you a +3 on the table. It gives you a better chance, a better likelihood of getting the +1. So actually, we're going to re-roll everything. Because what happens is the tactical ability is for all rolls, which I don't know where I got the only one admiral per side. The side with the higher factor adds 1 to the die roll for all attacks. The side with the lower subtracts 1 from all attacks made in that space combat. And let's check the technical advantage. The quality shifts are made on only 1 die roll. Okay. So we're just going to redo this whole thing. So we were looking at 2 attacks at -1 on the 48 table for the Zodani. That gets us to the 96. Well, that sucks. That's 14, and then 1 on the 42 table. So all I do is 20. Not a significant difference, to tell you the truth. Neat. Okay. And now here I get 1 die roll at +2 for the Imperials on 48. That's going to do 9. 3 die rolls at +1 for the leadership advantage. Okay, so 9, 17, and 22 is 39. And then we get a die roll at +1 on the 3 table, because it was 202, which does nothing. So it's going to be 39 to 20. Okay. Now comes the kind of painful part of all of this. Oh, I forgot to drop those troops. Let me get those troops on planet before. They would have a chance to do so during the interface. Big guys, the assault carriers here, I don't know. It's probably not wise. They should probably be up there too. So yeah, we got huge stacks of troops on Inthin now. Whatever that matters. There we go. Okay, now, so what do we got? Well, it doesn't matter which order we take. 20 hits. So these 2 are 18. Do I have a 2 somewhere? No. Let's take... No, this is 12. These 2 are 12. Let's take one of these. I hate taking these big jump ships, but I don't have very many jump 2 ships left. And these go over in the dead pile. I'll deal with them later. That gives 39. To make this here. And no, we're not going to do every round on this. 39 over here. And what do I have that's fun to kill? Oh, have any shitty stuff? Nah, this is all pretty mobile stuff. So I kind of don't want to kill the cruisers because I'm only allowed to haul 12. So 39 of these. Well, let's look for the shittiest first. There's 14. Oh, here's some more shit. 21. Looks like we're gonna have to kill some decent things. Oh. Well. Don't really like killing these 449s compared to the 348s, but if I kill two 348s, do I have a 2 that I could kill? Oh, shit me. Forgetting the steps. Can't do it this way. Alright, so we fucked up. Alright, let's go back here. Let's do the 20 a little differently. Okay. So the actuality is 6. Not taking losses is a value because rebuilding ships, repairing ships is cheaper than rebuilding them. But these C1s, who cares about? So we're at 20, yeah? So 6, 12, 20. And that gets rid of 2, 3, 4 points. So we're down to 201. And this is an important factor that I forgot was the, you gotta transfer the number over as well. Okay, so 39 hits here, and I wanna take these, I wanna start killing things. So 10. 21. 31. And 8 more. Well, 8 is a nice number. 39. Now, what did I lose? Well, this is, again, you gotta keep track. 6, 10, this could just die. 6, 10, 11, 12 strength came off there. So now I'm down to 130. Now, we look at, I still can't retreat without abandoning ship, so I want to stay more rounds. I want to do more damage for what I'm losing before I run. Now we're looking at 96 and 34, which will be on the 30 roll. So 2 big rolls here. I'll do these out. 2 big rolls at -1. That's 18. And one on the 30 table at -1. 18 and 6 is 24, so we actually did better damage because of the better die rolls. Now, over here we're looking at 201. 4 of these is 160, 192. And then I have a 9, which will put me on the 6 table. Okay, is that right? No, that doesn't sound right. Because 5 of the, I didn't have 5 of these. I was like 4 of these and a 3. So 4 of these is 160, yeah, 192. I must have miscounted something. 144, 180, 192. You know what? Yeah, I miscalculated. Too bad. So one good die with the Imperials at +2. That'll be 9. 3 at +1. 19, 28, 37, 37, and then this at +1. 37, 39, same hits. Okay, and I will be back when we're ready to retreat, I think. Which the Imperials are down to, or the Zodani are down to 6 unstreamlined ships. Oh shit, could have been 12. All right, I'm done. I could have saved a lot more of my fleet. And as you can see, the numbers are decreasing rather rapidly. I was going to keep playing it out, but man, I'm not going to redo the battle. Yeah, I could have had 12 ships available, not 6. For some reason, my mind fixated on 6, and I fought way too many rounds. I don't know, 6 more ships. These wouldn't have to be lost, perhaps. That's more than I would have lost. So, yeah, I don't want to keep going. The Zodani won the victory. I was a little curious about hey, what happens? What's the flow back? What's the pushback? And I kind of wanted to play that out. But given that I butchered this combat so much, I have really no desire to do that. And I guess this is gonna go up. Like I said, well, for one thing, there's the simple fact that the victory points are a little off. That 300 is not good enough. I think the Zodani can reach it quite easily. Every game that I've seen reported says a Zodani win. Even if they don't quite break the 300, we're already on turn 21, 22, 21. I just have to keep it above 200 in order to get the minor victory. But the Zodani absolute victory seems well within reach, even if you kind of blunder around the way I did. Again, it might depend. Maybe, the Imperials get the right admiral with the rimward forces or whatever. Maybe they get the warrant early and, a good commander and can really turn things around. There are possible exemptions to the Zodani being able to just walk away with it. But I think they're rare. I think they're very, very rare. And I don't feel like the Imperials got particularly unlucky. I don't feel like the Zodani got particularly lucky. I feel like they blundered a bit because I'm running them, and me running an attack is not great. The Imperial commanders, well, what did I not get? That's pretty good. But the others aren't going to make much difference. Another low number rank, crappy leader, and then a pretty good leader with, oh shit. Fuck me. I think I did worse. I got the, yeah. Okay, so the command die roll would have gone the other way too. Oh, I forgot about the guy from the 18th Fleet. I was just so excited about this guy being there. I forgot the reinforcements came with a significant cost. Yeah, so even this battle was just not what should have been done. I could recreate it. Oh, I tell you what, I am going to leave that decision for tomorrow because I could redo the battle correctly. Because all the ship losses are here. The troop losses, I think, are these two. I think that's all I took in troop losses from this. So I will leave that decision up for tomorrow. I don't know if I have the gumption to do this again. The space combat is, everything in this game is so painful mechanically. But the rounds of space combat give you these chances, you know. The Zodani have a couple of tankers with them. That gives them the tactical capability to turn around and run. The Imperials are all fueled up. They could run anytime they want. So yeah, the big question would be how much this difference and those die differences make. Not the die differences, but the capability of the Zodani to run, to being able to turn this game around and keep going. I was really gung-ho about keeping going, which is kind of why, I don't know, but I'm fatigued right now and have a work week ahead of me. So it's not like I can play anything else big at this point, though. So we'll see. Following the same pattern as before, writing down the numbers, you can see, you know, about the same, to tell you the truth, up until the disengagement point. And this is with the bonus for leadership going to the Zodani instead of to the Imperials. The Imperials still have the tech advantage on one die roll. Maybe dice changed a little bit, you know, but overall, the combat results weren't the problem. The problem was I didn't know when to stop. Well, now I know when to stop. For the Zodani, we took all of our losses basically on these battle cruisers that were not streamlined, so we can get out of there with our tankers. For the Imperials, well, I have these shitty C1, C2, well, jump 1 ships and jump 2 ships. I killed off a couple of crappy battleships as well early on, and then realized, well, I really shouldn't kill ships. That just costs me more replacements if I want to put them back. I'm not sure I want to build those back, but so then I started taking damage on ships, but that's when it gets tricky. Because if you're going to leave damaged ships in your fleet, if they're cruisers, this is a rule of thumb, I don't know if it's across the board. If they're cruisers, they lose a jump point. If they're battleships, they may not, or they almost certainly don't. Anyway, we're going to finish up the battle phase with the Zodani retreating. Now I got to make sure my jump is good. I should all be jump 3 capable. I kept a battleship damaged, but that's okay. And where the hell do I go from here? I could go to someplace like Paya, but I'm in danger if I do something like that. On the other hand, I think I'm in danger at Yori as well. Because, well, so here's the thing. Those tankers can refill at Yori, so I can keep getting the fleet out of there. Yori, well, don't want to lose that. But, yeah. The other thing is, the Imperial fleet isn't really capable of pursuing. They've got Union generals in charge of them. They can maybe win a battle, but don't really want to move on from there. They're actually, unless I have the pursuit pre-planned, I'm probably pretty safe, which might make taking something like Paya a useful plan. Paya has one of these. I could get the victory points from it. On the other hand, 17th Colonial, yeah, 17th Colonial is hard to deal with. What I want to do is I kind of want to retreat into where I'm going to get reinforcements. And that's back, you know. That's back. So I don't think we can afford anything other than that. How about Jin and Wretch? Are either of them worth... Jin certainly isn't. Wretch, probably not. That's 6 points, although it might be worth dropping troops there. Just because my fleet is getting smaller, and that's 6 points is an amount that I'm not going to actually be able to deal with. Well, 17th Colonial is all slow ships. I got to get that away from, and it's nimble, but I've got to keep that away from the main Imperial fleet. It would add a fair amount of firepower, though, wouldn't it? Not much. It would cause more problems than advantages at this point. So our main fleets are here, this 25th, or 28th, 35th, and 47. 47 is slow like the 17. I don't want to get that included. Yeah, Wretch is looking like a valuable place to go. The other thing I have to do is I have to apportion my fleet. It's gotten completely disrupted in terms of what's going on. Both fleets. And I just have to build new battle fleets out of them and figure out where the leaders are going to be. And that's going to take some time I don't really have at the moment. Okay, I got step 1 of that done. Hurting myself here. First I gotta find my place in the sequence of play. Poor Staples come out. I've done the fleet adjustment portion of things. The Zidani are putting everything into the 3rd Assault Fleet. I don't have... Oops, I got the wrong leader in place there. I don't have enough force to face the full might of the Imperial Navy right now in that force. And I want to fall back, grow it, and prepare to come back. You know, on the Imperial side, I would love to have kept it all together, but the thing is, I have a bunch of Jump 4 and a bunch of Jump 3, and I'm still under the impression, and my second leader is much, much better. Unfortunately, what this means is the quarter fleet is the Jump 3 fleet, and it's the weaker fleet overall. What does weaker mean? Well, you know, half of one of these fleets is about the size of the combined Zodani fleet. So my view is this guy, with his more powerful fleet, if he stumbles into that combined Zodani fleet, he's okay. The other guy is more nimble and presumably can avoid it and can try to claw back some of these points. The game's won. What do the points matter? Nothing. They don't affect production or anything like that. That was always one of my big gripes about this. You know, back in the day, it was also my gripe about things like Stalingrad, you know. Doesn't matter how many cities I have, I get the same replacement and you know, and reinforcements. No matter what I have, I was used to the Third Reich or War and Peace type model where, you know, things you owned helped you build stuff. Well, this game doesn't have that, and that was always kind of disappointing to me. Federation and Empire did. It was just a grind. It could have pretty much been a schedule, you know, up until a certain point. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Now I actually am kind of enjoying this more. I'm less focused on that production nature. A part of the production nature is the wide choice of different pieces I can build. And in so many games that have production in them that aren't, you know, your sort of wide open space games like SE4X or others of similar nature. Stellar Conquest comes to mind, of course. You know, honestly, you could basically rebuild your counter mix. So, yeah. And here you have something similar. You have replacement points. You can rebuild the shit that you got destroyed. And you got to make some choices and stuff. But it's a different nature. It's not like I have to control certain production centers in order to deal. What I have not done is the plot. Oh, and I pulled a bunch of admirals out of here so that I have more admirals for shuttling stuff. I probably have enough anyway, but I'm not finding too much use to having a reserve admiral with a fleet. A dude like this could be really useful, but I think he'd be at least as useful commanding forces coming from the Rimward. If he were a lower rank, if he were a worse commander, I would be more tempted to leave him with one of these fleets, because that might be the only way he's going to get a command. I certainly don't need to ship 3 guys back on a scout, but that's... Actually, I don't even have to use the scout. I'm on the X-boat line. But that's what I chose to do. All right. That's it for this morning. I'm already over time. One thing about the game pushing beyond this point is it may not be intended to, you know, it wasn't designed, it was designed to get you to an endpoint. And I'm trying to keep that in mind. I'm trying to keep in mind that, hey, where should that endpoint actually be? Right now we've seen that we can get up to that 320 range pretty easily. How much higher can the Zodani get? And I'm beginning to think 325, 330 might be the right place, you know, given that I kind of blundered around. But there's plenty more points left for the Zodani to get. And I'm not sure that an aggressive stance by the Imperials is going to claw back any of that, to tell you the truth, because we're still seeing Lanth going to fall here. You know, what could I do? What could I have spared to go defend that when I'm facing the main Zodani fleet? It's possible the quarter fleet, I'm sorry, the early fleet here with these reinforcements could have gone right after the Sword Worlds, knocked them out, and taken out what points were down here. Maybe that would help reduce the Zodani position. And that's kind of the one thing that I'm looking at as, hey, maybe the Imperials could have done a little better on that, focusing there. Up here, I'm too much in danger of that main fleet striking. And of course, that depends on, you know, what the Zodani do. I could have sent my Navy and force down this way with no problem whatsoever, combined up with Sword Worlds instead of with the Vargar and pushed in this direction. These points could have been taken by that two-jump fleet, or, whatever. Instead of cutting through here, cutting straight down and giving a more powerful boost. The Sword Worlds is not really poised for making this attack. They might be better off cutting this way, and joining up with stuff that goes through Jewel, whatever. There are different ways to look at this. I'm just trying to see, hey, could I have done something different for here? The thing I wanted to look at was how much fleet is left for the Imperials. It's not much. It's almost as if there's a localized superiority that happens right around turn 20, right? Before the third wave of reinforcement, or the second wave of Zodani reinforcements makes it into the battle. I think the Zodani win the long-term thing in numbers. Numbers may not be enough, though. The reason being the Imperial warrant and some of the other factors that are in play. What are the replacement points like? We're not getting any more replacement points for a while, and then we get 2 and 1 per turn. Over here, we're not getting any more for a while, but then we get 3 and 3. That'll help the Imperials a little bit, but I don't think that's enough to swing the game on its own. So it almost feels like there's this small window where the Imperials can claw back force, and then that third wave of Zodanis, the second reinforcements, comes crashing in, and they have numerical superiority again. Unless the Imperials somehow manage to destroy the Zodani fleet. So at this point, kind of the Zodani are probably going to play not to get their fleet destroyed. Because I think they will end up with the overall advantage eventually. And that seems to me to be a situation, if that is the case, where no matter what, the Zodani can guarantee a win. Pretty much. Pretty much. The one limiting factor may be garrison troops. Because they can't really be rebuilt. Right now I have 1 troop point. That can't be right. Can it? I didn't get my turn 20 troops. I did not get my turn 20 troops. 15 and 5. Did I get? I think I've been taking. Yeah, the Imperials stopped getting any. That's what's going on here. So this is actually at 39 and 5 more, 6. Yeah, and I'll be getting 1 per turn after that. 1 per turn's good. In the sense that, I can create 1 new unit each turn with 1 strength point if I have the right small units available to me to do so. Big units, it's going to be pretty hard to make them 1 strength point, isn't it? Yeah, it's going to cost me 10 replacements to get 10% of a 100 unit. It only cost me 1 replacement to get 10% of a 5 or a 10 unit. But there aren't a lot of 5 and 10 strength units, and they may not be the ones you lose. Reinforcements, replacements. 1 big battle cruiser came back for the Imperials. I looked at my points and the ships that were destroyed. I repaired something that was damaged. But the shit I destroyed, it's crap, man. I don't want to pay for this. And cruisers, 3 points for a 2-point cruiser squadron just feels ridiculous. Especially since I may end up generating more damage very soon. So, leaving that alone. For the Zodani, it's a lot easier. I spent 24 of my squadron points building up stuff that goes into the first assault fleet, all jump 3 capable, because I had to kill all those non-streamlined battle cruisers or battleships to get their squadrons back, and I bought all of them back. I'm not buying these crappy cruisers again. I also bought a bunch of 10% of units, spending my 6 points that I had available. What did I fucking do? That was confusing. So I should be at 15 there. Okay. But yeah. You know, that first assault fleet is a major force that's coming in soon. It's under orders to move, so why not? You know, and it's got decent jump speed, so that's a big fleet coming in, and we'll keep going until I decide I'm tired of going. That annoying point in the game where, you know, I got like this first provisional fleet. I have no fucking idea what to do with it. It's a free move unit. Some nice space-themed banjo music in the background for this one. Somebody's in the park playing. But, you know, normally the 0 movements, I kind of know what they should be doing. I know this thing can't face what's up here and it's going to have to fall back. But I don't know how to coordinate, you know, in order to do that. I have to kind of look at my movement plots, look at a whole bunch of fleets, a little less than there were. And this is some of the headache of the game, really. Trouble thinking with the banjo. As soft as it is, whatever, any music really kind of makes it hard for me to think during. Somehow I've learned to think with at least enough to do work as opposed to playing games, but with like news shows on and stuff. But I just kind of learned to tune them out more than anything else, I fear. So what I'm doing with the Imperials, because yeah, I moved the first provisional and oops. And I screwed up. I probably screwed up with the 213th. Yeah, it's the 212th. That was supposed to move here. What I did with those guys, I just moved them. That's fine. But I don't want to move these scouts until I know what my plans are for these other units. I think they're staying in the same hex, but no big deal. What I'm doing is I'm moving the Imperials first with their plotted movement before the Zodani go. Now, technically, I think the Imperials had to move first, but there's not much those scouts can do, and really their decision is just going to be based on what the Imperial fleets are doing more than anything else. Here's the movement situation. You can see Zodani's still trying to gain planets. As well as moving their reinforcements forward. Imperials not really able to follow up because at least half my fleet's been slowed down by bad command, which is why I'm heading up this way to try and deal with that. And I get another portion of my fleet, hoping for that warrant. I get that warrant, and I think the game just turns around. You know, I'm able to pursue the Zodani fleets. But if it doesn't come before the Zodani fleets get too big, then they can do kind of what the Imperials have done to the Zodani, which is, here's a roadblock, deal with it. You know, you want to get close to it, it might smack you. And it might smack you someplace you can't refuel. Rather than lose troops in fleet battles, I landed on, which, you know, was just a matter of, wow, they're on the wrong ship, you know. But you can't judge what the right ship is because the casualties are based on what fits. You know, what fits the particular losses you're taking at that point. I don't think I actually lost any troops, but we took Wretch and Roop, which are only 6 points each. That puts it to 338. You can see how the points are still growing. And I forgot to move my Imperials, didn't I? No, I moved them. Quarter fleet moved, yeah. Okay. They didn't do any combat. So now it's plot time, and I'm kind of losing interest. It's a matter of, hey, the game's over, man. You know, the victory conditions have been reached. And now what are we exactly trying to figure out? Where the victory conditions should have been set? That's a part of it. There's also the, hey, what happens afterwards, you know? But the what happens afterwards is hard to judge, because what are the victory conditions? Just keep racking this up? That makes sense, you know, the more I can conquer. But am I expecting the Imperium to be able to turn this around? Or am I expecting that third wave of Zodani forces to pretty much seal the deal here? And if they seal the deal, which this is one of the things I want to find out. If they do seal the deal, which is one of the things I'm afraid of, there's no reason that I can see for the Zodani to, you know, take a lesser victory. Because if they can defeat the fleets, the Imperial fleets, if they can force them to a combat and win, a real combat. The last one was real, but it didn't last long enough to do much damage to the fleets, right? I mean, we take a look. Yeah, we lost 50% of the firepower, almost. Yeah, say 40%, I don't know. A little bit less than that, 35. And here, maybe 10%. That's a big conversion. If we could get battles like that happening regularly, it would be an issue. But that battle only happened because the Zodani went into a battle they shouldn't have. Now we hit the stage of the game that should never have been reached, because it'll be won by this point, right? Where there's kind of this blundering around and dance, and because I'm playing with the contents being hidden, you can't really be sure what you're facing and what you're not. Whether, you know, that fleet that moved off is half the enemy fleet, or is just some little sliver, maybe an assault ship or two that's off, maybe with some firepower to take planets or whatever. And that leaves you in this incredible uncertainty that is a feeling kind of like what you see in some of the Pacific naval operations, which I feel this most tries to be similar to in a lot of ways. And there's sort of this blundering about feeling where, yeah, I don't know if I want to attack or not. I don't have my whole fleet concentrated in one area, and maybe my opponent does. The costs, not insignificant, but also not necessarily complete destruction. But the point is, unlike in, you know, games where there's open information, and if there was in this, there would still be problems because of the plotting. The plotting means that at least with some of your fleets, you've made plans without knowing where the enemy is going to be at all. And that's part of this blundering around and dance, you know. The Corridor fleet has moved up here where it could have struck here, but the 15th Colonial fled over here to get away from its strike range. But 15th Colonial doesn't know if Corridor fleet's big enough to deal with it. Corridor fleet doesn't have much idea of the size of the 15th Colonial, except that it's committed very low bombing factors to this, which is a sign that there's not much there. And I faced the majority of the fleet down here. So, you know, I'm pretty sure a smaller fleet could hit it. But then the question comes down to, hey, you know, what do I need to concentrate to take out corridor fleet? How big is it? Is the 18th the major fleet? The admirals were revealed and whatnot. Can't be sure, you know? And anyway, we continue the attacks down here with the Sword World. And the only other thing is the corridor fleet is grabbing something. And otherwise, things are kind of frozen, you know, trying to ship reinforcements forward and whatnot. Interesting consequences of that tech level being shifts is you've got a small force here, a brigade and a battalion, sitting on Lanth. Bombing them, not terribly effective. The high tech level puts a +2 on the surface bombardment table. And then the high tech level versus Sword World's rather low tech level meant that I killed off 100 troops in exchange with the bombing and everything for basically nothing, but call it 1 because he's neutralized because of it. He has no strength anymore. But to kill off like 6 strength points on the Imperial side. Now, it doesn't really matter, you know. Forces are worth what they're worth, and yeah, and that's a combination of factors. So, like, as long as I can win the battle, that's enough. I have to keep an eye out because I have to actually capture land in order to leave there. I think. And next turn I can recover. But I have to be careful in terms of like when I pick up my troops because I am planning on going to go. I have plots to go to Deganzio, and I may want to fly there, take that, and then fly back and finish off land. Just because this is a little exposed, and I don't want the Sword World fleet getting smashed by like some Imperial fleet that comes down and just wipes it out. Not that the Sword World fleet is going to make much difference. It's got a long walk to get into the main battle area. And other than that, the corridor fleet, it turns out I didn't send any troops with it. Turns out, which I don't know how big a deal is, but for taking Wercheers back, because it's my own territory, I just can bomb the enemy into destruction. But that's not the most trivial thing in the world to do. I've ended up doing 80% losses, though. It doesn't matter the size of the unit when you're bombing. What matters is the quantity of units. And since there's only one unit defending it, it's a 20, which isn't anything huge. But I got nothing I can send down to mop them up, so all I can do is bomb them and hope like local police forces take out the 0 strength remainder, which is automatic. That's probably going to happen because I need to refuel from the gas giant anyway. So it looks to me like I've taken that out. But I've revealed that this is a real force. Like close to half of the Imperial Navy, which means the entire Zodani Navy, if it can, wants to concentrate against one of these two. And that's the danger with doing anything in the game. When you throw 90 points of bombardment in, they got a pretty good idea where your fleet is then. Like I'm kind of running out of steam here. Not that I terribly want to do anything else, so I guess it's okay. I've got, you know, the thing is, it's that sort of nothing happens, you know? And with the hidden movement and everything, it's just this game of blind man's bluff when people do try to find, when one does try to find the other. Anyway, nothing much changing except the Zodani are trying to accumulate their forces. I figured out why I don't have any troops. I dropped them all off on Intha. Oops. Oh well. Otherwise, I would have been able to take Yori or whatever, but I don't know how much it's worth to do so. Victory points kind of don't matter because I got no idea, what, I got no goal anymore. I'm blundering around without a goal now. Some vague idea that, maybe I can see what the balancing factor is. But I got to tell you the truth, at this point, most of the fleets are on the board. And the Zodani outnumber the Imperials. As long as they don't lose the fleet they had up front, they should be okay. But they're trying to gather everything, the first two waves, which should be enough to face what the Imperials actually have. So I say. I don't know. Anyway, the Imperials are somewhat resurgent. It's just going to be bombing of Washirs. If I get rid of Washirs, or not Washirs, Washirs. If I get rid of the garrison there, it becomes Imperial. But I've also got plans to fall back and bring the Imperial fleet back. And I've still got these vague hopes of getting the warrant, of getting some of these additional ships. Remember, I got these guys too, with their black globes, which probably don't matter much in the strategic overall. I mean, slipping troops on planet doesn't mean much. Slipping by SDBs to bomb a planet, I don't know, maybe, but you're not going to get the planet that way. It's not like you capture it without killing the SDBs. And for the Zodani, the problem is gathering the forces together. So unless one side kind of parks like they did before and says, come to me, it's just sort of random whether or not they find each other. 18th Fleet is grabbing this, but I think then they're going back to Intha through a kind of circuitous route. They've actually got an additional fleet with them, and I'm seeing this where the fleets are collecting together, and I don't want to give up my more flexible zero command rating leaders, so I'm keeping them in an associated fleet, which makes movement harder because I have to move the zero movement fleet first, and that kind of telegraphs to the other person if they've got zero movement fleets, and then see what happens. I did bring some troops here to grab this. Again, it probably doesn't matter. I think it's going to come down to this grand naval battle that happens after the game is almost certain to be over. So, anyway. I've got some vague hopes, but again, the last naval battle was not terribly conclusive. I'm not going to say it was inconclusive. I mean, when you take out, I don't know, a quarter, or was it a quarter of the force? No, more like a third of the force. Somewhere between a third and a quarter. No, I don't know. And my brain's not working. I'm sorry. You end up with something that was significant, but it was a big oops by the Zodani to attack there. They had to stick around longer than they normally would. Normally, you'd be able to leave after maybe 10 losses. And the way the combat chart is structured, or 10 firepower losses, the way the combat chart is structured, it's pretty hard to get a whole lot of hits on someone all at once. And those ships have been rebuilt, at least the ones that were worth building, and are back on their way down, All right. I can't do the battles today yet. Well, Sword World isn't able to gain anything on the things that they've gotten yet. Graham is leaving the majority of their forces at Lanth. Now that they're fueled up, they're going to go to Degenzio, and then they've jumped back, so whatever. But the Imperials clawed back Yori and Wurshirs, which drops the point total a lot closer to that 300 points where, you know, the automatic victory happened, whatever. I mean, it's really... the Imperials are not going to be able to gain a lot of territory here. It's just going to fluctuate around in this area as, you know, if the Zodani want to leave garrisons and the Imperials can pick them off, that's great. But I can't really afford to use my huge bombardments to wipe out forces. Now, I could pick up, you know, use an assault ship and maybe a few battle-worthy ships to move up here and threaten things like whatever the 15th Colonial's up to and whatnot. But every little edge might matter in that full battle. Some part of me is saying, you know, because dealing with these piles of fleets is really, really obnoxious. And there's not a whole hell of a lot of information. It's not like what, say, Le Grand Guerre tries to do, where you set up a little mini battle type of lines and fire at each other and all of that, where there's some sort of strategy and some sort of interesting story being told by what the ships are doing to each other. Instead, you're just rolling on these broad number charts, and then the opponent just picks losses. I almost feel like there are just resources attached to a fleet, right? Yes, it's important what the jump value of those resources is, etc. And this would be hard to allocate. But to me, it seems like there's a certain number of firepower resources with a jump value, a certain number of planetary resources with a jump number, and I don't know. You know, the distinguishment between the different types of ships doesn't really make a lot of sense, especially since they don't align to anything particularly in the Traveler universe, like we talked about with the scout ships. Well, the others, yeah, vaguely, there are dreadnoughts and battleships and this, that, and the other, but the ones that have been historically reported don't actually link to anything in the game. For example, the only ship in Traveler that, you know, in the Traveler universe that contains a black globe generator, not the only one possible. The only one that's, you know, documented in the material that I'm aware of is the Kinyoneer class frontier cruiser, which is really a pretty light ship, probably too small to reflect as anything except a weak cruiser in here. But it would be, you know, reasonable for some of them to be used on this scale, you know, to create a couple little ships that could do it. But they can't do much. It's not unreasonable that there's a heavier squadron that has black globe generators and has those capabilities. I don't mind that. There's so little linkage, and it just feels like you're going through a lot of work to, you know, just keep your piles from falling over as much as anything else. But yeah, I mean, every time you want to do a bombardment, you got to count through everything. It almost feels like a set of tracks, you know, would be more useful. It would require a little bit more design thought than that, but it definitely... This idea of like trying to track every squadron when, you know, it's not a historical situation, and it's not trying to represent that level of detail even. These are just really nameless squadrons as far as I can tell. Now, there is interesting stuff going on though. The flexibility of, hey, do I have, you know, the correct fueling requirements for the path that I'm taking, and jump requirements and whatever. That's all interesting stuff, and you don't want to lose that. And that's the tricky part, is to get, whatever kind of tracking you have to be aligned to dealing with it as more of just a numeric resource. So, for example, you might have numeric resources that are battleship squadrons without all the differentiation. Again, abstract away a little bit. That contain both strong planetary bombardment and strong firepower, and have a certain streamline capability, whatever. And you just have a bunch of different classes of ships that are available, and maybe just a number of how many of those squadrons you have, so that you can do some quick multiplications and whatnot, rather than range through the stacks. Of course, troop transport, that would have to be another factor that has to be taken into account, and all kind of stuff like that. They abstract that away. All battleships can carry 20. Cruisers have different values, and the assault ships can carry 100 each. Again, how much detail do you need? Make cruisers each able to carry 5, or each able to carry 6, or whatever, and just get something like that where you'd have just basically a type of ship, a numeric marker on top of it, to indicate how much of that type of ship you have, rather than dealing with all these damn counters. Be cheaper to produce too. And get rid of this shit. I don't know. It's just the worst design for casualties that I've seen. It's just horrible in so many ways. All right. I guess I plot. Okay. Turn 25, I think, although I tried to do some turn 26 movement accidentally. And we got something big. Turns out 3rd Assault managed to hit, I think, the 18th Fleet there. Now, these are 2 big fleets. This is not the combined corridor fleet, still back here. This is half the Imperial fleet, though, approximately. Maybe a little more than half. It's maybe 2/3. Facing something that was about the same size, but I think has grown a little bit, because 28th Fleet went into it. So the Zodani have the advantage here. However, they have the disadvantage of jumping into a system where they're not able to jump out. Same situation as last time, though. I have tankers with me somewhere in here, I think. Yeah, I still have the tankers with me, so that means I can pull 12 unstreamlined ships out, but I've added more non-streamlined ships, I think. Not positive. Looks like it. It looks like there's a lot there. So, the Imperials may be in some trouble, but this is kind of a roll the dice type situation. If the Imperials are driven back, they take some losses, they run. If the Zodani are driven back, they take serious losses like they did last time, probably. It's an opportunity hit. We'll see. And otherwise, we have the Sword Worlds doing their shit, and that's really about it, I think. But I don't know how much longer I'm going to go. We'll see. We'll see what comes of this. Hey, if the Zodani fleet gets wiped out again. But, I think their fleet overall is bigger, so what? Right? Quick look, it looks like the Imperials are in trouble here. Now, I mean, they're not going to get wiped out, right? But even if they were, and this were essentially over, that wouldn't say, oh, wow, the game is unbalanced in favor of the Zodani for the big war if it were to come. And my feeling is that the Imperials did something really stupid here and got caught with their pants down, basically. But it's not too bad. Now, had it happened last turn, when they jumped in here, had the Zodani correctly guessed, and this is why it's blind man's bluff, right? Had they correctly stumbled into the Imperial fleet at that point, before it was recharged and capable of getting away, this could be devastating. Because, again, honestly, I don't know what the point values are. This looked like a big fleet, and it's the more senior commander. But man, we'll see what the numbers come out as, but these guys are the only battleships involved. And we got this many battleships on the Zodan side. Now that's not a guarantee. Sometimes the cruisers are actually bigger than the battleships, even in all ratings. But like, there's some really shitty battleships, but I don't see many of them. There's a couple. Yeah, they're on the wrong side. And then, lower valued cruisers, although we do have some, these are basically battleships as far as I can tell. They have almost the same value, a little less defense, call them battle cruisers, whatever. But certainly far more impressive than this piece of shit. I don't know, that, and that's Imperial standard, so it gets the tech advantage, but it's probably like a really, really low tech squadron, given the numbers on it, because otherwise it just doesn't make sense, but whatever. All right, we're going to take a little pause while I ready myself to fight this sucker out and then do the same shit we did with the last one, which probably will only go one round, because I think the Imperials are outgunned and want to get out of here. Which means what? I lose. Talking 30-something points was kind of, let's say 30 points is about what we're looking at. We're looking at 3 or 4 ships may be destroyed, or given that repair costs are cheaper and we're in Imperial territory, I can definitely take repairs rather than destruction. So we may be looking at, like, instead of 3 ships destroyed, 5 ships damaged, because they take less damage. It's easier to damage a ship, or damaging a ship takes more defensive, has a higher defensive factor. So if initial damage, it pulls out of the line, and then you're hitting another fresh ship with a higher defense factor. So less ships will get hit. Anyway, that's my guess. So this time the totals are indeed a little bit more lopsided in favor of the Zodani. Not much. 193 to 124. I remember last time we had that. So, this is pretty close. I don't know. 10 points off, 20 points off. It's not far from proportional. And because of that, what do we got for bonuses? Well, the Zodani have the command bonus. The Imperials have the technological bonus, which only applies to 1 die roll. Which doesn't make sense to me. I would do it the other way around. I would say the command bonus should only apply to, and I gave my hand-wavy reason why that made sense, which is once you expand the command span of an officer, they probably have trouble implementing as good a tactic. So once you go over that 48 firepower, you've got too big a command span. So yes, you're still getting an advantage, but it's a more limited one. But the technological advantage should always be there. And instead they do it the opposite way, which just kind of blows my mind. I got no argument for why technology only works for smaller fleets, or only works best for smaller fleets. Like, it decreases in value the bigger the fleets get. No clue. All right, we'll start rolling some dice, and then the Imperials will leave. Both sides took a few hits. We did 28 damage to the Zodani, which a couple of battleships are going to be damaged, have to go back, repair, whatever. 38 points to the Imperials, but they have a better turnaround time, and they took a lot of hits on really kind of crappy stuff anyway, but I do want to recover it because we got lots of repair points and not a lot to fix. Not a lot that's worth it over here. You know, it's like 1 point to repair a cruiser makes sense. The additional 2 points to get that first level of the cruiser back, not so much. That's the end of turn 25. I think with a couple of battles on it, it's going to be pretty long for the video, so I'm going to load this up. We're in a position where, honestly, the Imperials want to launch an attack, want to try to catch the Zodani. Actually, what they really want is for the Zodani to launch an attack and fail on a place like Yori, and that's what we're trying to set up for. So we're attacking Yori, but we're just kind of hoping that the Zodani hit us before they get their entire fleet together. We've got most of our fleet with the Corridor and the 18th gathering there, along with perhaps some of these reserves, but the emphasis is on trying to catch the Zodani before things like the first assault fleet make it up there, which is painfully large. And, you know, I think if all the Zodani ships are up there, we're going to see the continual push begin. As it stands, we're already well above the victory conditions at 342. I'm just trying to, you know, get a feeling for what would matter. Like a 350 victory condition for an ultimate victory so far feels out of reach. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's not, because, you know, if we make that punch through here, we're going to get that, right? Some of these planets, Intha is 9. You know, that gets us there. Could we maybe skim along the borders and grab more points? Yeah, we could. And again, making that kind of decision would force the Imperials then to try to defend. At this point, I feel like the fleets are kind of matched, but it's not going to last for long. The Zodani get the rest of their ships very shortly. There's only 3 remaining battleships there, plus these. We're outnumbered, and there's just nothing coming through, except we look at the replacement rate. That goes 2-1. The Imperials go to 3-3, but that's not enough. So really what it comes down to is if this first assault fleet makes it into the region, I think it's over. I think there's nothing that can be done. And more I'm looking at this and saying there's not an easy balance. I mean, if you put that to the 350 victory condition, well, fine. The Zodani wait. If they have the ultimate numbers when it comes down to it for the big fleet, they're just going to win that fleet battle. And the 300 is just a gimme to end the game early. So far, I'm unimpressed with what the situation represents. Like, there's not a good game in these victory conditions that I can see. Excited as I am about, you know, this sort of operational space combat, really, really well defined, not some kind of 4X fuzzy feeling game, you know, and not the big strategic situation that's just too much in like Fed and Emp. this is more, again, it feels like Company War to me. It feels like, I don't know what else. I know that I have at least one other. I mean, Web and Starship kind of, but that's a weird 3-player game that I couldn't quite get my head around the 3-dimensional movement aspects for very well. I'm thinking things like Star Force Alpha Centauri, but it's been a long time since I played that, so I don't know. There certainly are a few games like this, but yeah, one of the things that I found is that, like, these big science fiction games, the big fantasy games, they have trouble hitting the cylinders well. It's like people spent more effort trying to balance historical unbalanced situations rather than, we have a situation here where honestly the designer could tweak things however they like. It's not like there were ship manifests that were already published that they had to stick to. It's known that the Imperium is bigger than the Zodani Empire, but that could be, the concept of, the first problem with that is the concept of, the Japanese attack in the Pacific or the German Blitzkrieg. How well does that apply here? Well, it would work fine, except we're never getting to the point where, the Russians or the US have the numerical advantage. So we're never reaching that tipping point that the design seems to imply. Instead, as far as I can tell, unless the Zodani really fuck themselves over, it's going to be, and I tried, it's going to be hard for them to end up in a situation where they don't get the automatic victory. All right, we're going to send this one up. I'll keep fiddling around with it, but because I'm curious about things to see, and I'm waiting on the train game that good old Robin Hoodlum really wants to see.